Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, and I am really excited to talk today to our guest, Jennifer, because you are from my neck of the woods up here in Portland. You guys are out in Centralia, Washington. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, Jennifer?
Thanks, I'm doing great.
Well, I'm excited to have you on today, Jennifer. We are going to talk about your family's two different cruises that you had, and I believe just talking ahead of time, you got a couple more booked. We'll talk about that as well. But before we jump into the cruises that you experienced, why don't you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and how did you and your family get interested in Disney and Disney Cruise Line?
Sure. So I'm a mother of three, and I grew up in San Diego, so lots of trips to Disney growing up. So I've always been a big Disney fan. And we had planned a Disney cruise back in 2011, and I had booked it when I was pregnant with my third child, planning on taking him when he was 3 months old. And back then that was what Disney allowed. I think now they don't allow babies to cruise until they're 6 months old. And he had wound up being a premature baby, and I didn't want to bring him in a big crowd. So we wound up canceling that cruise. And due to his prematurity, experienced some developmental delays. He's now 7 and doing absolutely amazing. But he was really late to potty training, and I had tried lots of things to bribe him. And really kind of the only thing that worked was bribing him with a Disney cruise. So I had booked one. We have one booked for 3 months from now in November. And that one had been booked. I did the 18-month, right when it opened, so that we got the best price deal on that. So then when he finally got potty trained in September of 2017 and asked for the cruise, we booked a really quick last minute one on the Dream out of Port Canaveral, and just did the little 3-night. And it was nice because I also wanted to try out a shorter cruise, number one, to, see how he would tolerate it, how, if my older kids would like it, and make sure people weren't, getting seasick or having a miserable time. And of course, that wasn't the case. Everybody had a blast. And now we're just so excited to do the one that we have coming up in a few months.
Well, perfect. Yeah, that's a good way to kind of do, a tryout with the 3-day cruises, especially out of Port Canaveral. Now being on the West Coast, they have quite a few 2- and 3-day cruises. We'll get into your 2-day cruise here in just a little bit, but 2- and 3-day cruises out of San Diego. So it's kind of nice for us West Coast people to, if you don't have time, or in your case, with your son's, slight condition, being able to try that out on a shorter cruise really makes it nice, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I know, if you look at a lot of the chat boards on Facebook, people will say that they feel like a 2 or 3 day is too short. And I couldn't disagree more. I feel like any minute spent on a Disney cruise is better than a day spent at home. And I know for a lot of people's budgets, the longer ones are, can be kind of prohibitive. So I really feel like, if a 2 or a 3 night, is what's in your budget for your family, like definitely take advantage of that, because they are just, absolutely magical experiences.
Okay, so your son has a disorder known as sensory processing disorder?
Yeah, so what sensory processing disorder is it's a condition that a lot of children, or even adults on the autism spectrum have. And my son doesn't have a formal diagnosis, but he does have some tendencies towards some of those autistic behaviors. And sensory processing disorder is basically a disordered, sensory, either both input and output. So things that some of us might find comforting, a sensory processing child wouldn't. So they may be really picky with what they eat. People that don't like tags in their clothes, things that are, really itchy. Some of them, my son doesn't like loud noises unless he's the one making them. So he loves, screaming and yelling at, so he loved the pirate party on the ship because it was, it was loud. But then when it was time for the muster drill, when the alarms went off, I was, really careful to keep his ears plugged for that. So that was really kind of one of my biggest concerns about us doing the cruise was how well he would do with those challenges that we have with him.
Okay. And I wanted to bring that up there for others who may have children or others that are coming with them with these types of disorders. So let's just kind of walk through the first cruise that you guys did with those kind of maybe, slight challenges. How did the boarding process go? That can be a time where you've got lots of crowds, there's lots of noise. Was there anything that you were able to do to kind of mitigate that a little bit as you got on the ship, or did that work out pretty good?
Yeah, I felt it was like really, I was going to say, now I'll have to tell you this funny story that my daughter loves to bring up. So we were, waiting to get on board, which everything was fine. And then as we were boarding, he was starting to get restless and he wanted the Doritos that my daughter had. And I wound up like screaming at her to, just give him the dang Doritos. So she's like, that's her memory of getting on our first cruise. It's just one of those not so wonderful mom moments. But once we got on, he did absolutely fine. And that, how they announce your family when you initially come on the ship is just such a fun little touch that they do. But at Port Canaveral, the boarding area does get pretty crowded, but they have vending machines. And he just, kind of played with his iPad with his headphones on and kind of drowned it all out. But there's lots of little things for kids to look at, and Mickey's usually around. So I felt that process wasn't that bad.
Okay. And what were you guys' thoughts when you first got on the Dream? This is the first time being at a Disney ship. What did you and your kids think?
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm sure you remember your first cruise. It's just absolutely magical when you walk on, and just the decorations and the engineering of the ship is just so amazing. It's just kind of like an indescribable feeling, almost like just being, in a live dream.
Hence the name, right?
Yes.
There we go.
Appropriately named.
Yeah. So you guys are a family of 5. And what kind of stateroom did you guys book then for the 5 of you?
Yeah, so we booked the family deluxe veranda. So that had a queen bed for my husband and I, and then the couch folded out for my daughter. The bed popped out from the ceiling for my 10-year-old son, and then my 7-year-old slept on the little Murphy bed. So I felt like that was, and I didn't feel like it was crowded. I felt like there was a decent amount of room, and the ottoman had storage, and there were, plenty of drawers. And that's the other thing that I think people, go back and forth on, is like, should you pay that extra money for the veranda? On our 3-night, we didn't spend a ton of time out there, but with us being a family of 5, that is, unless you're going to book 2 inside rooms, that is what you have to do to be able to accommodate a larger family. But I don't think, for me, I don't really feel like the veranda is like a make or break. I know for people with smaller, like babies that are napping, they feel like it's nice because then the baby can nap and then they can sit out on the veranda and have coffee or read while their kids are napping.
That's kind of the great thing about the cruises with, the much larger rooms and being able to put 5 in there. We've only had 4 in, and we felt like we had plenty of rooms. So that's good to hear that with 5 people in there, you kind of felt the same thing. Well, before we turn into dining, let's talk about the kids clubs a little bit, because you and I were talking about this before we started recording, and you had some really positive things that you had to say, since your son kind of has this, slight, autism spectrum challenges and some kind of the noises. How did he do in the kids clubs, and what were your kind of experiences there?
So the kids clubs, first of all, I just have to speak to the security of them, which because I'm a little bit of a paranoid parent just by nature, but they have the little security bands, and when you go to drop your kids off, they match your kid's picture to your picture to your security code, and then they have the kids sanitize their hands on the way in and way out. So I just really felt like from a, infection control standpoint and a security standpoint, like they're just, just top notch, which really made it nice for, my husband and I to relax for ourselves a while without feeling, worried about our kids. And in the kids clubs, they had such a wide array of activities that I really felt like even those kids that kind of needed a quiet break or, a little bit less commotion, the area where they had like the little video games and the iPads, they all had headphones. So if they kind of needed to drown out that noise, they have like little cozy seating areas where kids could kind of go and tuck away. Because I know a lot of kids with sensory issues kind of like, feeling cozy or, kind of like snuggied in. So that those areas were available too. On Castaway Cay, we did also use the kids club there. And I had another mom fail with that because my husband and I did the couples massage on Serenity Bay. and I didn't bring my wave phone with me. And my son had kind of like had a meltdown and was a little bit overstimulated, and they were trying to call me because he wanted his mom. And since I didn't bring my wave phone, I didn't get that call. So by the time we got back to the kids club, he was, pretty upset. My older kids were there with them, but, my daughter was like, oh, he had just been really ready to go back to the ship, Mom. So my advice for parents is just make sure that you bring your wave phone with you when you go on to Castaway.
And just to go back for those who are getting ready to sail the first time on Disney Cruise Line, the wave phone is there's 2 phones in each one of the staterooms, and that's the way that the counselors and the kids clubs can contact you around the ship if they need to get a hold of you. So you can bring those and just keep those with you wherever you go. Let's go back just a little bit. Did you go in and talk to the counselors ahead of time and kind of, let them know your son's background a little bit, or how did that work?
Yeah, I didn't, and I suppose I could have, but I feel with his older siblings being with him, I knew he'd have them as a resource, but I have heard of just from other families how accommodating the cast members are. And if you do give them a heads up for things that your children might be sensitive to, they are really, very attentive to that.
They're pretty in tune with kids and different kids' needs, it seems like, while they're in there. Did you go to, is there any like Facebook groups by any chance that you've went to ahead of time to kind of talk about this, or have you noticed afterwards, I guess, places where people might go to kind of learn some of this type of information that might be helpful for them?
Yeah, there are some really great Facebook groups. Disney Cruising is one that I like, and then there's Disney Cruise Line Junkies. Both of those have, well over, I think 50,000 members, and it's nice because you have people on there that are, platinum cruisers. I think there's one lady that's gone on like 70 cruises. I don't know how she's managed that. It's pretty, I'm a little envious. And then, those of us that are, really new to the, to the DCL world. So it's just kind of a nice place to use as a sounding board and learn from other people's experiences.
How'd your other kids, I feel like we've been kind of, talking about your son, but how'd your other kids take the clubs?
Yeah, the older ones just had an absolute blast too. So my daughter's 12 and she's going into 7th grade, and I'm just extremely blessed that she is not overly mature for her age and really enjoys the magic of Disney and dressing up. So she got to do the Bippity Boppity Boo Boutique and had an absolute blast, and just, loved the fairy godmothers that are there. They're just, darling ladies that they train for that experience. So she had a blast. My 10-year-old son is just extremely social child, very active. And I can't remember the name of the game that they play in the kids club where they bounce this ball around.
Gaga Ball.
Gaga Ball, yes. Loved that. I could not pull that kid off the Gaga Ball floor. So yeah, they both just had a wonderful time. It was, really like one of the best family vacations we've ever had. And when I came back to work after our trip, I kind of sounded like a walking commercial, because I really feel like every human on the planet should experience a Disney cruise at some point in their life.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about the food. What were your guys' thoughts about the different restaurants that you got to go to on the Dream? Yeah,
so the food is amazing, and like I said, they really cater to kids. So the children's menus are very simple and repetitive, which, for the large majority of us is fantastic. However, if you have a child with a more advanced palate, they're free to order off the adult menus too. And the wait staff, I find, if you're asking for advice on, which one you should choose, they always tell you both, and then you wind up having, a table full of lots of different things. My daughter, on our 2-night cruise that we did, I dared her to try the escargot, which she did for a $50 bet.
Ooh.
And, yeah, I went big on that one.
Wow.
Yeah, but she absolutely loved it. And that, I think, is kind of the fun part of it, is that like kids can try things that you wouldn't normally serve at home or, at restaurants that, they're not anywhere near as fancy as things that we usually go to when we're at home.
Well, I need to travel with you because I love escargot, but I wouldn't have told you that. And then I would have let you bet me it. I'm just kidding. So how did your son do with the food then as well? Did he enjoy it?
He did, yeah. And he was, again, like very simple. So like the first night he was a hot dog with no bun. And then from then on, that's pretty much what they brought him every single time. And even if it wasn't something that was served in that restaurant that we were in, they would get it for him. So like, just, how accommodating they were just really was, I just really felt was over the top. And the other thing is like, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. I know Christy has like a lot of gluten allergies, and they've been like super accommodating with her. And I just really feel like they don't eye roll when you tell them that you want something on the side or something without sauce, or that something needs to be left off. Like they're just really, so accommodating and just really there for you to have an amazing time.
Yeah, it's got to be nice too, having the servers that come with you each night, so as they get to know your family, especially if you have a picky eater. Our kids they used to be a lot pickier than they are now, but it was pretty nice that they kind of knew what they wanted and what they needed. So I'm sure that worked out well for you guys as well.
It did.
Did you try Remy or Palo by any chance, or did you just eat as a family?
We did not, because my husband and I both work pretty demanding jobs. So when we go on vacation, especially that one, we wanted to just really, spend as much time with the kids as we could. And my husband is not a super fancy eater, so I didn't know that we would get the full experience out of that. In one of our future cruises, I'm hoping to try one of like the Palo brunches, because I've heard those are absolutely fantastic. But yeah, so no, we stayed simple on this one.
No, that's perfect. So what about entertainment? What did you guys? There's so much to do on Disney Dream. And with a kind of a shorter 3-day cruise, what did you guys gravitate towards, and what did you guys get to do?
Yeah, so that was the other, I guess the downside to that 3-day is that our first day was at Nassau and we got off the ship. And then our second day was at Castaway and we got off the ship. So I really feel like we didn't get the full experience of things that we could have done. So really all we did was the movie theater and the kids clubs. Like we didn't even see the evening shows. Now my daughter and I did when we did the Wonder out of San Diego, but so that in terms of like looking at what could have been the downside to that trip, is I feel like we didn't really get as much out of the ship experiences as we could have.
How about the pools? Did you guys take advantage of the pool decks during?
We did. And the aqueduct, like our whole family loved, and even my son, who I was afraid, might think it to be a little bit too much. He sat in the raft with me and, wanted to do it again and again. And he has this, part of this sensory things. He kind of has no personal space. So he gets up in people's face and he'll hug random strangers. And it was really cute because like this couple that was in line ahead of us, he was, talking to the lady and hugging her. And then we found out later on that she was one of the people that was in our fish extender group. So
no.
It was kind of a neat little special touch to the trip.
Well, perfect. Anything else you guys did on board that you remember that kind of brought back some good memories?
The sail away party was a blast. The pirate night was a blast. And just being able to see fireworks out over the sea is just, with the sky being so black and no, lights from any cities is just, that was really, really fun. And the kids had a blast with that too.
Did you guys get dressed up for Pirate Party?
Oh, we did. We absolutely did. Yes, we did.
I'm kind of like, sometimes I could be the no fun dad, like, I don't know. I don't feel, I love Halloween. Halloween's like one of my favorite times of the year, but it always makes me nervous to like dress up in front of people like that. But we're on the last cruise that we were on. My youngest was like, how come we're not getting dressed up like everybody else? So our next one, I've told him that we're going to get dressed up and we're going to do it up right. So I'm glad you guys had a good time with it. Well, let's talk about, so as you said, it's a 3-night, you guys, get on board that first day. The next day you're in Nassau. Let's talk about the ports and Castaway Cay here quick. So what did you guys do in Nassau?
So in Nassau, we did the Atlantis Aquaventure that had the dolphin experience. And it was the one where the dolphin like just came up and swam by you and you got to pet it. So we weren't in deep waters. Blake, my 7-year-old, like absolutely loved that. And it was really neat because we had been home for, 4 or 5 months and he was in with his speech therapist that he hadn't seen in a while. And she's also a Disney Cruise Line fan. And I had said to him, oh, tell Megan about what we did on our vacation. And he said, oh, I swam with Tico. And it just, for me as a mom I hadn't remembered the dolphin's name a week later, let alone months later. So it just really validated, how special and impressionable like this, how special these vacations are to the kids, that they, remember small details like that. So that was amazing. And a lot of those dolphins were actually Hurricane Katrina rescues, which I thought was really, really awesome, because I know a lot of people worry about the safety of those animals and how they're being treated. So that was really, very reassuring for us. And then we just really did the lazy river. We didn't do any of the really extreme water rides that they have there. So that was just a nice, relaxing day.
Does that include food by any chance, or how does that work?
It does. Yeah, it does. So that one included, and again, it was just, very simple, like hot dogs and burgers and chicken sandwiches and things like that. And we just had lunch by the pool, which was nice.
So then we move on to Castaway Cay, and that's just a special place that everybody loves. Tell us about your day at Castaway Cay besides the massage there.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was nice.
Yeah, it really was. That was amazing. At Castaway, so the day we went, my husband is kind of a thrill seeker. So for that day, I had booked him one of the jet ski excursions. And unfortunately, the weather was a little bit iffy that day. So we did have, it did start raining by 3:00. So people had, went back to the ship a little bit early. So on our Castaway day, we dropped the kids off at Gully's Cove at the Kids Club, and got them all checked in, and they were having a blast, except for Blake, as my aforementioned story. And then my husband and I did a couples massage over on Serenity Bay, and then we went to the adults-only cafe for lunch, and the food there was amazing. Like, they had some really nice barbecued meats and lots of fresh vegetables and salad, and of course, the all-you-can-eat ice cream, which is just kind of a DCL treat. So that was really nice. And then we did the little $14 where you can like rent the floats, and then we just kind of hung out in the water for a while before going back. So I think like the weather cut it a little bit short for us, and then also the massage was nice, and it was kind of like one of those once in a lifetime things, but it did take up so much time in terms of like navigating things around. I don't know, I think that was probably like our one-time thing for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So did he get to do the tour with the jet skis then, or did they cancel it?
No, so they canceled it because of the weather. So all of the water sports stuff that day was canceled.
Okay, so was it planned for earlier in the morning, or was it later in the afternoon that you had it planned for?
I think we had it like after our massage. So
okay.
they had closed all that up.
I know that's like one of the tips I've heard about parasailing and sometimes jet skis. If you can book it earlier in the morning before the wind picks up, sometimes, of course, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes you can get those things in earlier in the day before maybe the weather moves in sometimes. So
I will do that next time.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't look at those because we did the 5K and then we just kind of hung out at the beach. But the next time we go there, I'd like to kind of see what kind of opportunities there are. So, well, it sounds like you guys had a good day at Castaway Cay. And the tough part is, how did you guys kind of manage that last day? Because we've been on cruises where you do something so you have a sea day the day before you get off, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so many of these Disney cruises, they hit Castaway Cay and then you're off the next day. So it's kind of a busy day. You don't really have that chance to necessarily relax other than relaxing on the beach, I guess. How did you kind of manage that evening as far as getting everything packed and getting ready to get off the ship?
So that is the tricky part, is that your luggage will be picked up the night before. So you basically have to have everything ready to go. So either sleep in something that is respectable enough that you can walk off the ship. I've heard of, people forgetting that and having to walk off in their pajamas.
Yeah.
But or just pack a really light bag so that you have what you need. And they have this wonderful service where they take your luggage the night before, and then you don't see it until you get home. So it goes straight from the ship to the bus to the airport, which is just because I hate schlepping luggage. So that was a really nice service that they offer.
That's awesome. And then how was disembarkation then the last day then? How did that work for you guys?
Yeah, so that was super easy. So you get up in the morning and, run down, and you can either do the, kind of hectic cabanas thing, or I believe they also give you the option of eating in one of the main dining rooms, and you'll be assigned to which one they want you to go to. And then we went in through customs and then got on the bus. And it was just, I think, way easier than I had expected. I guess I thought with customs being involved that there'd be inspections and, opening bags and all that. But it was really a pretty smooth process. And then if you are paying cash for your things that you've accrued through your ship, through your stay, then you need to stop off and pay for that. But other than that, everything just gets charged to your credit card. And then you have the little slip under your door. And then with your gratuities, you have the choice of either having those added to your account, or they'll leave you envelopes and then you can add in whatever you like for your cast members that helped you.
Well, from your 3-day cruise, let's we've touched a little bit on your 2-day. Why did you guys decide to do the 2-day out of San Diego? And this one was just you and your daughter?
My best friend and her daughter. Okay. So the cruise that we have booked for November, originally my best friend and her husband and her 2 kids were going to join us. But then she realized that her kids would be missing a lot of school. And I do take my kids out of school for vacation. She's a little more strict with hers. So her son actually, turns out, was not really interested in traveling, but her daughter really wanted to have that experience. So we try to do one thing a year with the mothers and the daughters, because our daughters are really good friends too. So this year we decided we would try the 2-night, and then that way Leanne and Kara could see if they liked the experience and would want to do it in the future. And our girls could have some time together.
So this was last spring, right?
Correct. Yeah, this was 3 months ago.
Okay, so this is on the Wonder out of San Diego. Yep. Thinking about 3 days, now you go down to 2 days. What were your kind of initial thoughts about, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you talked about being on a 3-day and you kind of missed out on some of the things. Did you really kind of look ahead of time to, like maybe trying to find personal navigators online or whatever to really kind of plan things out? What was your thoughts going into a 2-day cruise? Shorter?
Exactly. So that is what I did. I, tried to find online, blogs that had people that had scanned in their previous navigators. The other thing is that our port was Ensenada, which I have been to, growing up in San Diego, I've been to Mexico many, many times. So I didn't have a burning desire to get off the ship. And I didn't really feel like, other than the La Bufadora blowhole, I really didn't feel like there was a ton that, would be, worth getting off the ship for. So this one, we really tried to maximize seeing everything on the ship that we possibly could. So we had like a little bit, different plan of attack for this vacation.
How was the embarkation process out of San Diego?
Yeah, so the port in San Diego is amazingly easy. So my best friend's husband had dropped us off like in the front parking area, and we walked over, not realizing that they have this really easy little U-turn driveway to be dropped off at. So getting on was amazing. And there was like 0 lines and super, super easy to get on.
Did you guys book one room together then?
No, we did 2 separate ones because I snore.
Okay.
I'm a difficult travel partner.
Well, what did you guys book this time then?
Yeah, so this time we did a ocean view, so just a window, and that was just because we would have booked inside for this one, but there weren't any inside left. And I really didn't feel like I missed the veranda. There's such beautiful deck chairs on deck 4 that if you want to go outside, you can always go down or go up and hang out there. So we were in our first cruise, we were on the 8th deck. This cruise, we were on the 2nd deck, and I really didn't notice a ton of difference in terms of the movement of the ship either.
You had a chance to look at this ahead of time. What were some of the things that you and your daughter wanted to do, and what did you guys do?
So my daughter wanted to do another Bippity experience, and we're trying to cram those all in before she ages out of them at age 13. And then I think one of the things that we kind of ran into, I guess, a glitch with in terms of when you're looking at traveling with other families is there was one time where my best friend's daughter really wanted to go see a new Marvel movie that was out on the ship. And my daughter had wanted to do a little cooking club thing that was in the kids club. So both of them were a little bit upset that the other didn't want to do the other thing. So I think, one thing that I would do differently moving forward is if traveling with other families, kind of like set that expectation that like, okay, we're not going to do everything together. There are going to be things that one person might want to do and the other, and the other doesn't. So my daughter did that, the little cooking class, and thought it was fun. The only thing is that we thought it was going to be like a true baking class, but they like take the cookie dough out and then magically hot warm cookies appear from the other side of the kids club. So, but that was something that was fun for her. So both girls loved the sail away party because they both loved to dance. Both of them loved the pirate night, and Leanne and I both really kind of went all out dressing up for that too, and dressed the girls up. So we had a blast with that. One thing that I learned on this cruise is that you can't be late for dinner. So when the girls, were taking a little bit longer to get ready, my husband's, someone that is, very much on time. So we're, never late for anything when he's around. So when it was, just all girls getting ready, we were like 20 minutes late to dinner, and it really kind of, I feel like, threw them off. And my friend was, kind of, wondering, like, she was, I guess I could say she wasn't impressed because she felt like, oh, well, they're not getting things here quickly. But I think when they're serving that many people with that orchestrated of a meal, I think if you have someone coming in late when, now we're having our appetizers while everybody else is onto their main course, it kind of threw it off a little bit. And that was at Tiana's place. And the show for Tiana's place that they do in the middle of dinner is just spectacular and super fun. They do a conga line through the restaurant with, the characters and the kids, and the music was really, the musicians were, very, very talented. So it was, just really gave it a nice ambiance.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Tiana's place. I like the food there, and I like that type of music, kind of that New Orleans kind of jazz style of music. So I really enjoyed eating at Tiana's place when we were on the Wonder here last spring too. And I think you guys must have got off right as we got on. I think that did the 2-day, and then we were on to the 3-day right after you guys. That's funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have the beignets in Tiana's?
We did have the beignets. They were amazing.
Oh, they're amazing. Best part.
Yeah. Well, how about did you get to make it to the shows in the evenings, or what did you guys do in the evenings?
Yep. So we saw both of the shows, and I was almost in tears because it's just the costumes and the makeup and the talent. I mean, I've never seen a show on Broadway, and I've heard from a lot of people that they say that these performances are really Broadway caliber, but just absolutely beautiful. And we did the later dinner time, which I think with older kids is nice, especially if you are doing excursions and getting back to the ship, then you're not having to rush back to make that 5:00 dinner. So for our Wonder cruise, we would go see the show and then go to dinner afterwards. On our second night, there is no formal night on the 2-night. I don't even think on a 3-night cruise. I don't think they do formal until you're on a 7-night, I believe. But I wanted to feel like a princess. So I brought a ball gown, and I bought a replica tiara of Princess Diana, and we went all out for dinner, which was absolutely a blast. So there really is I feel like a wide range of how people dress. So there isn't a huge, you don't have to dress up for dinner if you don't want to. But for us, it really was a, fun little mother-daughter thing for us to do. And then that's where she got to try her escargot.
We like to dress up too for formal night, the longer cruises that we've been on. And like you said, some people go to the nines. You see people in tuxes and ball gowns and whatnot. And then, people a little bit less than that. But it's always kind of a fun thing to do. And we always enjoy getting a picture taken too on board like that. So that's a fun thing for you and your daughter to do. Anything else that we haven't touched on the cruise, the 2-day one that you wanted to get out there, Jennifer?
Oh, one experience that we did on the 2-day that I absolutely loved is they have character drawings. So there will be a illustrator that walks you through how to draw a Mickey Mouse face or a Donald Duck face. And it's just a really, nice little keepsake to take home that you can, frame as a memory when you get home. But that was one thing that we didn't get to do on the Dream that I thought was really fun for us on the Wonder.
Who did you draw?
Mickey Mouse.
How did he turn out?
Yeah. Oh, it came out beautifully. Beautifully.
Oh, that's awesome. I know. I've done Mickey twice, and he always looks like a bear for some reason. I think I don't get his ears big enough or something like that, so he always looks just a little bit different. But, well, good for you. Well, I guess anything else before we kind of finish up here?
No, thanks for having me today.
Well, before we finish up, since we kind of started off talking about your son with his just kind of this, the mild autism, do you have any other tips that you'd like to give families out there who might be traveling with kids that might be facing some different challenges as far as your experience with Disney Cruise Line or just traveling in general?
Yeah, I think, first of all, like I had mentioned before, don't be afraid to ask because they really do want to accommodate you and your family's needs. Also, try to, as much, I know a lot of children really thrive on routine. And we're kind of a fly by the seat of our pants kind of family and, aren't super structured with that. But the nice thing about, a lot of children with autism thrive on that, knowing exactly what we're going to do at what time. So like that navigator for them is actually, very comforting. Like, at 2:00 we're going to do this, and at 3:00 we're going to do that. So that, even though they're out of their normal element in terms of, not being at home, having that feeling of like being in control of their, of their schedule for a lot of those kids is really comforting and reassuring.
Did you let him kind of take a look at that himself and kind of pick out what he wanted to do?
No, because I was going to say he's still learning how to read.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were just really there to kind of like try it out as our test run for our 7 nights. So I think, now that he knows what the ship is like and what there is, this trip that we have coming up, I'll probably, talk to him about the options or things that, things that he wants to do and let him make more of those choices on this trip.
Yeah, I think it's kind of neat. My youngest son really kind of, I keep saying blossomed, but he really did on our last trip where he just got the navigator out and he read it and said, this is what I want to do. And he kind of put his schedule together. And that's the kind of neat thing, as you kind of alluded to earlier with these cruises, is, you can come together for the port excursions as a family and for dinners and things like that. But there's a lot of things out there that, the kids want to do in the clubs or whatnot that kind of gives you that free time as well. So you and your husband can kind of enjoy a little bit of quiet time and a little bit of vacation as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which, for a lot of our trips, we'll, bring my mother with us. But when you do a Disney cruise, because of how great the kids club are, you don't have to bring someone to care for your children because that's kind of built into your package.
Definitely. Well, so where are you guys cruising to in November then? What's your plan?
So we have our next cruise that we have coming up is our November cruise to the Caribbean, and there will be stops in Jamaica, Cozumel, and the Grand Cayman. So I'm really excited about that one. And that trip we are bringing my mom on. And now that I know that she won't be tied to my kids, I'm planning some fun, fun adult activities for her as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Jennifer, especially sharing kind of some of your tips and techniques as far as, navigating the trip with your son. So people that might have some kind of similar backgrounds, it kind of gives them an idea of what they can do as well as far as going on these types of cruises.
Yeah, so really, I think, if there's anything that I can say is just, really look at this as a wonderful opportunity and a great way to experience those vacations with your kids in a way that they're able to be accommodated.
Well, thank you for coming on. And when you guys get back from your 7-day Western on the Fantasy, drop me a line and we'll have you back on and we'll talk about a little Disney Cruise Line again.
Perfect. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jennifer. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
Definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I'd really like to thank Jennifer once again for coming on and sharing her and her family's experiences while traveling on their 3-day cruise on the Disney Dream, and especially being so forthcoming and kind of explaining her thoughts as far as traveling with a child that might offer some unique challenges when you go and travel, especially on these cruises and just through the airports themselves, and then also on the 2-day cruise on the Wonder out of San Diego. If you know somebody else who would enjoy our shows, we sure would appreciate it if you would pass it on to them. It kind of helps us get the word out in the cruising and the Disney community about our show. Also, if you'd like to go over to iTunes and leave us a review, that kind of helps us grow the show as well, as it gets more known for people as they're looking for different podcasts over there on Apple iTunes or wherever you happen to listen to this podcast. And if you'd like to get a hold of myself or Christy, you can always do so over on Facebook. You can get a hold of Steve at Facebook at DCL Podcast and also on Twitter at DCL Podcast. Of course, you can always find Christy over at packyourpixiedust.com, Pack Your Pixie Dust on Facebook, and Pack YR Pixie Dust on Twitter. So between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next travel adventure, all of us here at the DCL podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next vacation. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast.